Today I want to talk on the topic of explicit teaching versus inexplicit teaching. And again, this comes from my book, Reflections on Classroom Thinking Strategy. I like to stress the verb, always the verb in green, green for go. So I'm going to say something that sounds counterintuitive. Never ask people to think about something. I'll explain why. Never ask them to think. Effective teaching and learning should be simple. I don't mean simplistic, and I don't mean that it's easy, but it's clear and it's explicit, just like this sign. We get that sign in a nanosecond when we're on the road. If we go around the curve and we see this sign, we'd be feeling very, very uncomfortable. And I'm wondering how often I've made people feel uncomfortable by asking a question which is not simple, it is not explicit, it is simply inexplicit. Let's move on. I mentioned we must never ask somebody to think about something. For example, you've seen that sort of question very often. What do you think about the play? What do you think about the movie, the book? What do you think about the Prime Minister or the President's decision to do X, Y, or Z? And the reason for that is we don't know. People don't know what you're really asking for. There's no clear cognitive verb or task verb or action verb, even though the word think is there. The trouble, on the left, all of that is thinking. That's Bloom's taxonomy. There are 6 types of thinking, from remember right through to design. So let's have a quick summation of Bloom's. At the bottom level, we act like an information desk as teachers and instructors. We want people to remember things. We list, define, match, recall, and we ask them to do the same for assessments. Linked to that, of course, is the understand, where we act like an aha bubble because we want them to be able to explain, classify, interpret, and so on. And thirdly, in this foundation thinking area, is the apply verb, acting like a formula to apply new skills or rules to a situation. And if you look at the green verbs there, solve, plot, and so on, calculate, that's what we do a lot. At higher order thinking, we want to get to the analysis, to pull to pieces, to look at component parts. And that's when we act like a microscope, asking students to investigate, debate, discuss, and so on. Why do we do that? We analyze something so that we can make a decision. We can give a value to evaluate it. And so this is where we act like the scales of justice. And we use the data from the analysis part to decide, to determine, to judge, to justify an action. And finally, if we look at something carefully, we find there's a deficit, then we act like an inventor. And what we try to do is to come up with new or better ideas, develop, create, invent. So having said we should never ask somebody to think about something, you can be a lot more explicit. You can ask somebody to think about their holidays by, and remember it's all about the verb, at the remember level, choosing a remember verb such as list, asking them to list 4 social and 4 action events, very explicit. Or at the understand level, ask them to explain why we human beings need a holiday. And at the apply level, we ask them to think about their holidays by showing how that person had changed their habits or behaviors as a result of some very important event that took place during that holiday. To get onto, and again, that is explicit. To get onto higher order thinking, we can ask them to think about their holidays by, at the analyze level, discussing the pros and cons of one of their events. And at the evaluate level, to think about their holiday by deciding which was the best social event and which was the best action event and to justify their decisions. And finally, we can ask them to think about their holiday by suggesting 3 improvements to make sure that the next holiday is even better. And again, we're being explicit. So in summary, when we design a question or an activity, we must be very clear on the cognitive demand. Where on this Bloom's taxonomy scale are we asking students to act? What are we asking them to address? So we need to be very explicit about the cognitive verb. We need to know what that is, because when we do this, then we're being explicit, and that's fair and simple teaching. Eric Frangenheim, thank you for watching.